Welcome to Directionally Correct, a People's podcast with Cole and Scott.
Today's guest, nobody.
Thanks to our sponsors, Worklytics. Generate actionable insights from work data while protecting your privacy using workplace analytics with our partners, Worklytics.
Hey, Cole, remember that time we recorded that entire pod and the audio, not so great?
I do remember that time. That time is right now.
Well, what you're about to listen to isn't great audio quality, but there's a lot of good nuggets in there. We apologize for the difficulties, but we'll see you next week with a better pod.
We're sorry, and thanks from Directionally Correct. I don't know.
Have you ever been to England though? Like seen Westminster Abbey?
I went to England and I saw Westminster Abbey as a senior trip in high school.
Holy cow, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was a little while ago too, so it's kind of the memories are fading somewhat.
I mean, the good news for you is like you go in there and like it's like so historic. It's like got these bones from like 1045. It's like, what the heck's going on here? It's insane. So I mean, like even if it was high school for you, I think it's okay.
I remember there was like, they had like, was it like William Shakespeare or Chaucer or somebody's like buried there, like some like famous people. And I know our British guests are just going to be torn right now for not knowing this stuff. But
we got a new king. I get emails from Nigerian princes. I mean, it just runs the gamut.
Your life is filled with royalty.
Royalty.
Well, I mean, what do you think about the new king?
I have no thoughts. It doesn't impact my life in any way. However, it is cool. It's like I hear the British don't really enjoy it because you have this family like siphoning money off of like the public taxpayers. But it's a cool like little kitschy thing. Something we don't have in.
I thought they were independently wealthy. I thought they just had money.
I guess,
is that wrong?
I don't know. I really don't know how it works.
I remember hearing J.K. Rowling had more money than the Queen at one point after Harry Potter came out. That was interesting. And so I just assumed that it's like, oh, the Queen is just like the richest person in the country, but no longer J.K. Rowling should be Queen. I don't know.
Have you taken the kiddos to, I think it's Universal Studios where they got like the Harry Potter like world or something like that?
I've never been to Disney World or Universal Studios.
I haven't been since I was a little child. And from what I see and hear, like it is just exorbitantly expensive. It's like insane.
Yeah. What I heard is, you get the fast passes to like not stand in line. And so the real line's like 2 hours. The fast pass line's like 1 hour because everybody gets the fast passes.
Is there like a Kim Kardashian, like super fast line where it's like you just.
Well, I think those are the ones they buy out the whole park and then it's just them for their kids. And yeah, that's what the Queen does. So I guess not anymore because she's not with us any longer.
Child's version of heaven, right? It's like I just go and just.
I mean, I sincerely wouldn't know if it was heaven or not. I've never been.
What do you think like heaven's like? Like if you had to guess, or what would you want it to be like? Is it better?
It's probably cloudy. I feel like everything. You always have a clouds.
Like really like sitting around on a cloud.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have not put a lot of mileage into thinking about this.
That's fair. I would hope it would be filled with stats and statistics. So it's like, how much time did you spend in traffic? And you could be like, oh, god damn, it's like 47 days. And like, how much time did you spend like watching The Office?
I'm afraid to say this, but I think you might be talking about hell. Hell is where people are having to do statistics.
Right? How many miles did you walk in your lifetime? It'd be insane.
For eternity, you have to run correlations by hand. No calculators, no generative AI, just by hand.
No ChatGPT.
Well, the Queen. God save the Queen, or is that how the expression goes?
Well, I mean, it's God save the King now. Like at the moment of her death, like everything switches over to the King. So the Nat becomes God save the King, and all the money turns into a picture of Charles. I think it's Charles.
My wife watched that show on Netflix about the Queen when she was younger.
Really?
Crap, I watched a few of the episodes with her.
The Queen?
Is it called The Queen?
I have no idea.
It was really popular too. Like I'm not just like saying some obscure reference. But I know a lot about the Queen's early life because of that show, but I don't know much about her later life or about the new king, other than he's like a really old dude, isn't he?
He was sitting there waiting for unfortunately, his mother to pass away for quite a while, or at least step
Yeah.
down. I
Okay.
think he like took the throne at like 20 and like lasted till 90, 95, 100. I don't know how old she was when she passed
Well,
away.
he may not be king for very long. I mean, according to actuarial tables, women women last longer than men do. So he better be looking over his shoulder.
Is 5 minutes of fame.
They say everybody gets their 15 minutes of fame, so better enjoy it. What do you want to talk about today, man? It's good seeing you in person too.
It's good seeing you in person. Look, you're wearing the same thing you were wearing, what, a week ago? 2 weeks ago?
I have. Well, we could talk about this if you want. I'm a pretty minimalist person. I have a stable
Yeah.
number of hangers in my closet, and when a new shirt is bought, an old shirt is removed. And so I only have a set number of shirts.
You got your starting lineup. I like
Mhm.
that. I like that a
So
lot.
they do change every so often when shirts get worn out, but I'm not one of these people that has just tons and tons of clothes.
Boy, it's like a cluttered world, cluttered mind. It's minimalism is the way to go. It really is. Like, I don't know, you see me every week. I simply have the same shirt and like 5 of this shirt. Really.
Yeah.
I'm like Zuckerberg. Like you just wear a black hoodie, but I wear the same like Patagonia shirt.
It's like that's pretty rich of you, Scott, talking about my shirt wearing habits when I'm pretty sure I've seen that Patagonia shirt like 50 times on the podcast.
I'm just casting stones. That's what I do best.
I don't know. Got any more good shirt talk?
I'm sure we could. I'm sure we could go shirt talk.
We're retitling the podcast from Directionally Correct. Shirt Talk.
No, we may need to like cancel this whole.
Did you ever listen to NPR?
Well, I mean, like I do listen to it, especially on weekends.
There used to be a show called Car Talk.
Oh, click and clack.
Yeah, Car Talk. It was like these Northeastern dudes. That's all. I never really listened to it, but I remember them say, "It's Car Talk." And I'd be like, "We got Shirt Talk." It was Cole Scott. That's all I got, man. This is what you get. This is
what you get. But I know that you come from a family that you're self-proclaimed that they like to argue and they like to get loud, right?
That is correct. I come from, I don't know why. So on my mom's side, everybody were pilots, and on my dad's side, everybody were lawyers.
Airplane pilots, really?
Yeah, airline
I did not
pilots.
know this.
For some reason, both of them like to argue. So I'm just cut from the cloth of people who like to argue a lot.
I guess both professions like are people in control, like they're like egos, and like you gotta like take the reins in both sort of professions.
Yeah, a lot of God complex stuff going on there. Do you have like a family of loud talkers, or are you a quiet type?
No, we are reserved and we are quiet, and it kind of goes along with I think I've already annoyed you in the past with like my theory of like the more monitors you have, the less efficient you are in your job. And I sprung my new theory on you that the more wheels you have at the airport, the more annoying that I find you as far as like to be around and this sort of thing.
Yeah, but I feel like that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Okay. I like that. But like people that are like loud and boisterous, they have a sphere around them. And the same with like the people with the luggage and same with the people with the monitors. I guess they just like have an aversion to things taking up space. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm doing like a mental inventory of how many wheels I have on my luggage because I'm like, I think I check all these boxes.
Well, I mean, I think that's the yin and the yang, definitely. But like you also see people like they're like they'll state things like very confidently in like say a meeting or something like that, and you're like, yes, but like they tend to get like a really good reaction, but that sort of overconfidence isn't necessarily a good thing.
You mind if I derail us a little bit for a second?
Yeah, of course.
So the yes, but type often get this feedback in their life. And so they've done this brilliant trick, and I'm putting brilliant in quotes,
Okay.
where they go, yes, and.
A little improv.
Have you seen this? No, it's like it's literally they just continue to say what they were always saying, but instead of saying but, they say and. It's like, I think you don't mean what you're saying because they still have the same meaning, but they've gotten the feedback that they shouldn't be saying but, so they say and instead.
It's a jujitsu trick. It's the same thing you would use in a dissertation defense. It's like use someone's momentum against them. Like they come at you with questions, you're like, I agree with you, Cole, and here's something totally different that doesn't relate to anything you just said because it's the point that I really wanted to make.
Or it's more like, I agree with you and I disagree with you. It's
And
like, I don't think you understand the word and. Going back to what you were saying before, loud talkers, have we like what made you bring that up?
well, it's because one of the things we were going to talk about today.
Is
I
it?
think that you have failed to read the agenda.
No, I'm trying to tee you up, man.
Well, I thought I was teeing you up.
No.
Oh,
Well, we did find this tweet from Adam Grant
we're going off the rails here. I love it. I
already.
love it.
We pay too much attention to the most confident voices and too little attention to the most thoughtful ones. Certainty is not a sign of credibility. Speaking assertively is not a substitute for thinking deeply. It's better to learn from complex thinkers than smooth talkers.
There's a lot to unpack there. First is that just because like someone like states something doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. And I think this real point is like listen to all the voices in the room, not just the loudest voices of the people that state things the most succinctly, because there's a lot of nuance that's involved here. And I immediately go to like the Dunning-Kruger effect, like the people that say things the most matter of factly typically don't have a full understanding or appreciation of the total I don't know what you would ever call it, the universe that it
Yeah.
resides in.
Well, what's the Dunning-Kruger effect in case somebody's not familiar with that?
Dunning-Kruger effect is that the people with low to moderate ability tend to overrate their overall knowledge of a topic, whereas the people with the most knowledge tend to work in non-absolutes.
Yeah. Well, it's because if you really know something, it's very difficult to speak about it in absolute terms, right? You're always, caveating here. Well, but in this case, it's not really true. And so you spend all your time saying what's not true just so you can say this one little clip of what is true. And that doesn't sound as good as, I know what I'm talking about, like a loud talker would do.
I think that's one of the massive benefits of like going through a PhD program is like you go through the comms process and you realize what you don't know or what the holes are in your answers or what the holes are in the field such that you can connect dots later on. So like some people say like the criterion problem is solved. Hey, fantastic. Like no.
No, it's probably not.
Not even remotely true.
It's a good title though.
Well, let's publish a paper. We've solved the criterion problem.
When I've described it before like this, I've actually described starting a new job like this too, but it's kind of like getting a PhD. It's like you're in the biggest room in history, like an indoor room, and all the lights are turned off, and so it's dark. And just imagine, like the little Christmas bulb lights that like go outside.
Yeah.
They're very small, like really tiny lights. And it's like you had a random number generator that would randomly turn on one of those lights everywhere in the room every time you learned a new piece of information. And there's a point in time where the room is fully illuminated, where you can actually start to see. But it takes a while.
That's a really interesting perspective, or like a visual image that you're painting there. I like the light analogy because it quite is like illuminating your brain with these sort of ideas. There's also the aspect of just like at first you don't have any like Bayesian priors. You don't have any prior knowledge to draw on. Like you learn. It's same thing with like if you find an article that you really like that on like a topic that you're not familiar with, like this is the best article I will ever read, or like I read my first like I don't know intro textbook, like this is the best textbook I've ever read. It's like no, it's probably not. I mean, just if like logically, it's probably not. And the more
It is also the worst at the same time.
that is true. That is true. And in that case, I think you just drop the topic and never approach it again.
So that's how we learn. Don't be a Dunning-Kruger. And I swear, I think this must have been one of our early episodes. I may be just making this up, but we found an article where the authors of the Dunning-Kruger article overestimated their abilities to analyze the Dunning-Kruger data. I swear I found that at one point or another.
This sounds vaguely familiar, yeah. Or like
And I
the
was like,
Dunning-Kruger effect wasn't real, or
it was like minimized because they hadn't like known enough statistical knowledge to analyze the data properly. So I was like, talking about the meta irony.
it's got
finding that
like
out.
truthiness to it, though, right? It's like
Yeah. Good callback. Good word.
But
Truthiness.
we all know that the Dunning-Kruger effect is alive and well. But you know what is also alive and well, or about to be on the precipice here anyway, is AI technology and the impact that it has on the youngest employees. So this
Like
is
youngest or
well,
newest?
they say the youngest. So I mean, I guess you could do it either way. But the idea is that managers are going to use and prefer to use generative AI to handle small routine tasks as opposed to handing those off to their younger or perhaps less tenured employees, such that it's easier. It's just easier to do these sort of things as opposed to like how to train somebody and like coach them up. All these sort of things that young employees, new employees need to go through to understand the culture, need to understand just basic interaction with leaders, etc. They're not going to get that sort of mentoring anymore if we continue down this line of AI technology. And this is just a tweet that like really piqued my attention. But there's two supporting bits of information here. One is an article entitled "The Effects of Remote Work on Collaboration Among Information Workers," where they collected email, calendar, IM, video calls, all sorts of crazy stuff from 61,000 Microsoft employees. And they found that people became more static and siloed, fewer bridging connections, decreased in synchronous connections and more asynchronous connections, all this sort of stuff. And overall, it meant that employees were less likely to acquire and share information. And another one was the blinkered boss. How has manager behavior changed with the shift to virtual work? So they conducted surveys and they found that managers have changed their behaviors in three different ways. One is they turn more inward, so once again become more siloed. They became more task focused at the expense of building relationships. So once again, you get this fail to get this relationship with the other perhaps their subordinates, and fewer opportunities to develop new skills. So you're working from home, don't really seek out growth opportunities anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, this is a really interesting thought. And I think it syncs with like I would call a meta trend in society of kind of the hollowing out of entry level positions altogether.
Say more. What does that mean?
I guess put it in a personal context. Do you want to go to the 27th best doctor or the best doctor? Do you want to go to a car mechanic who's been doing it for 20 years or somebody who started being a car mechanic last week?
Right.
Right? Do you want to hire somebody who has 10 years of Excel experience? I mean, say what you will about Microsoft Excel, but would you rather somebody who just started learning Excel last week or somebody with 10 years of experience doing Excel?
Of course.
I think there's this macro trend across society, like looking for saying like we as a consumer, and think of it this way, a boss is a sort of a consumer of sorts. If they're hiring, they want to consume like who are they going to hire? Right? What kind of person do I want on my team? And like the tolerance level for someone learning on the job has just been actively decreasing over time. And I just see what's going on with what you're saying with like generative AI and it could affect their relationships. It could affect their technical skills. It could be a lot of different things, but that, it's going to be tough to be an entry level employee in anything.
It's going to be tough to be entry level. There is some initial evidence that suggests that like generative AI will help the lowest skilled employees the most. And hell, we saw this on a previous pod where was it robots in surgery? It helped the lowest skilled surgeons the most, but those ones with like the median skills like refused to use it because they had this sort of Dunning-Kruger effect. They like thought that they knew more than they actually did, and therefore like committed more accidents, what have you. I mean, I think we're gonna do the same thing with like I don't know call center workers or administrative sort of task where it's going to raise the performance bar of these sort of lower non knowledge worker sort of skills to the point where it's like, what does good performance look like? I know we're going down like a totally different path than we started.
Let's do it, man. And I'll even continue to build on this. I think it's coming from knowledge worker jobs. I don't think it's
Oh
just low
yeah,
skill jobs.
absolutely.
I would actually make the argument it might be coming for more for knowledge worker jobs. I think we all assumed it was going to be the call center folks first, and I think what's really coming out of it is like it's making PowerPoints better than corporate workers make PowerPoints. And it's like, what do I really need a corporate worker for if they're not making PowerPoints and using Microsoft Excel?
What was the world going to be like when like you get like robot PowerPoint maker meets robot PowerPoint reader, and it's just those two talking to each other? It's like, okay, why do we even have people here anymore?
I think it gets to kind of an existential question, which I think we were sort of talking about with Rob Stilson. Like, what's the point of meetings? And like, who do they benefit? You know, because it really becomes sort of arbitrary and kind of hilarious to think about two machines sitting down to have a 30-minute meeting to to unpack like what the presentation said, and then like say, all right, is somebody taking notes today? You know, do we have an agenda? Like, I just imagine two machines saying that to one another.
Yes, we're definitely taking notes. There's
Yeah.
other like crazier stuff on the horizon, which I wish we got into with Rob, but like things like you can clone yourself, like virtually clone yourself, in the sense of like Cole makes, I don't know, 1,000 management decisions. Let's look at all of his management decisions, and in this particular case, he would make this choice 98% of the time. So now imagine like you have a group in Australia. It's 3 a.m. here. They need an answer now. You would make this choice 98% of the time. Your robot clone, Cole's clone, could just be like, all right, I approve this because probability, real Cole would make that same choice.
I think these are decisions that we're going to have to cross the Rubicon of in the next few months, weeks, or years. And it kind of goes back to it was either 2 or 3 weeks ago we used that IBM slide from 1979 that said a computer cannot make a decision because a computer cannot be held accountable. So insofar as, you know, they're making a decision and can be held accountable for that. But here's what really gets screwy is if they're making a predicted decision on your behalf, but you're held accountable to the decision they make for you. That's where it's going to be messed up.
Like Minority Report, like you would have made this decision, therefore you're going to jail.
You would have eaten the whole bag of Cheetos had we not stopped you. It's like, I promise I wouldn't have eaten all the Cheetos.
But I mean, there is a real issue that I don't think we've really talked about, like going back to like new employees or like freshly minted out of school, this sort of thing. And you need to be socialized. You need to understand basic business etiquette, or at least right now you do anyway. Who knows in 5
Yeah, it's
years?
like, do you?
Yeah, it's
Like, I feel like all business wisdom is being challenged at the moment. Do you feel that way?
I kind of feel like everything's being challenged at the moment, but just because, boy, it's so revolutionary. Like,
Yeah.
We don't know what we're even getting into.
I think, but I would argue that it has the potential to be revolutionary. It is for sure evolutionary. It is improving at a rapid rate, and depending on key decisions that are made over the next few months or years, or maybe even 6 months ago, and we just don't know the outcome of it yet. Whether it is truly a revolution that displaces a lot of people, or if regulation is going to, you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the nerdery about some new regulatory measures that are coming. But I'm just curious, like, let's put it kind of closer to home here for a second. Is there, thinking of like generative AI use cases, in like both of us have worked primarily in HR functions, even if we weren't doing traditional HR work. Is there a use case for an HR technology using generative AI that you'd be like, oh, that would be so sweet if I had that? Like, what, can you think of anything like that?
Generative AI technology. Okay. Any sort of dashboard. If you could attach some sort of like predictive analytics on top of it, and then be prescriptive. So like someone looks at a dashboard and say like, you're a boss, and we're seeing, or the computer's seeing these sort of patterns in your team, perhaps even deep patterns that a researcher would never even notice. Here are 4 things that you should do with your team right now.
That's kind of wild. This wasn't meant to be a plug, but we're actually And we're not that far, but we're actually already doing that. But that's not where I was going with this. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I was like, I wish I had an app that is like there's the advent. Have you heard about like these Auto-GPTs? I think a lot of it's vaporware, to be honest with you, but I think there's some real use cases where essentially they're just going behind the scenes and linking via API a bunch of different applications. So let's say you linked your bank account to your Expedia account to your
Amex.
spouse's account, and you planned a whole trip, to Hawaii with like the click of a button.
Gotcha.
And they got you the cheapest price, and they knew everything about you, and so they got you the hotel that you would like the most, and they booked the excursions for you and everything. And it's like that's what it's sort of like. I don't think it actually works that well yet, but just go with me for the sake of argument. I think about that in my personal life. I wish I woke up in the morning. There was through my work, an application that said, "Hey, we analyzed your day, and 42% of the work is apt to be automated and low value added. So we just went ahead and did it for you. And like now what's left, because you have 42% of your day freed up. Here's what the prioritized tasks that we think that you would actually like to do and that would add the most value, and how you can kind of contribute here. And we're going to actually like enable you to like open up those tabs on your computer and start working on them if you so choose. And you can you're training the algorithm to get better and better and know you more and more. And like I think that would be super helpful, right?
I mean, that's the promise of like a personal assistant right there,
Yeah.
personal digital assistant.
But I would love it, and that would be great in your personal life too. But I think if that was a part of like your Google Suite or your Microsoft Suite or something, that would be amazing, right? And then the other one I think about is like a lot of what HR has to do is just mundane BS. And I see like the promise. I actually see a lot of people posting about from a mental health standpoint that these GPTs have been really helpful in helping them like feel better about a problem that they're having or like get less burned out. And if you like talk to HR business partners and chief people officers, a lot of what they do is like being an organizational therapist, really. Like they have to talk people off the ledge at work from quitting.
In theory, what I would like, I'll go to the dark mirror route that you were complaining about a while ago.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't have that sort of mundane or like the relationship building or like this sort of thing, does that impact in a negative way the other aspects of your job? Like if you had nothing but cotton candy all day, you wouldn't enjoy that anymore.
Take your least favorite task, right?
Okay, we'll say
Take your lead. No, I'm just saying, for the sake of argument, take your least favorite task at work, and what if you knew that it could be divided in half?
that would be great.
I don't think that's Black Mirror by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't think I'm really making the point that I was really intending to make either. But it's a wild ride, and
I don't know. I just think that companies are always going to these like weird use cases, and I feel like there's like bread and butter stuff that could be focused on right now, and I don't see anybody focusing on it. And so I wish that they would reapply their efforts to tackling these type of problems.
that is, and we have a article here. Essentially shows that once again, our friend Ethan Malik had uploaded U.S. Census data in a data dictionary into ChatGPT with Code Interpreter. And he said, I would like you to generate some interesting draft hypotheses about industries and then test them with the data, make assumptions if you need to. And God, it did it. And not only did it do it, it wrote a research article, I believe it's even in like APA format, about the findings, which currently we are not at the pinnacle of what this is going to be by any means, but this is really and like, okay, go back to the earlier statement. Okay, draft these hypotheses, make this research paper, turn it into a PowerPoint. You got your whole job. You got your whole job completed.
I literally wrote an article about this. I called it the Inquisitor and the Change Agent.
Mm-hmm.
So if that future state comes to bear, what is the value of the analyst? It's who's going to ask it the best research questions and what hypotheses to test. Insofar, ChatGPT is not doing that yet, right? And also, who can take the output of the research and change the world more effectively? So it's the Inquisitor and the Change Agent. Those are the two things that people are going to be responsible for. And I keep seeing it over and over again because they say this is all of what an analyst does. It's like it's not all of what an analyst does.
No, and I think these are the sort of elements that you're referring to of like, what if we could automate part of our job, like writing a research paper. I do get in the flow state and have fun doing it. Trying to craft ggplot tables. It's while can be fun, is also very tedious, especially when it's not working right. But like, what if you could concentrate on those aspects that are like, what are most creative, or like interviewing folks to draw connections across different studies? That's where people are gonna really be involved in the process, right?
Let's nerd out for a second. No, I know we're not in the
No, we
nerdery
don't
yet.
nerd out.
Well, no, I want to hear why. I think we have the one audience in the world that would actually appreciate the discussion we're about to have. What is it about ggplot that you like? And what makes it intellectually stimulating, and what makes it get you into that flow state?
What do I like about ggplot?
Or I mean, you were using it as an example of saying, "Hey, Cole, like I understand that automation is coming."
Yeah.
I'm just kind of reparroting back what I heard from you. I know automation is coming, but there's things that are going to be automated that I actually like doing, right? And I find joy, and so there's a loss, there's a death of sorts that's happening by losing that ability to do it. And so what I'm hoping to hear is like, what is the thing that you appreciate about that?
Yeah, and I think that we're making like we're circling back on each other and the points that we're trying to make around this like loss of the
Mhm.
task through automation.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like ggplot, it kind of feels like it feels artistic. Like you get to make design choices, and like it's silly if you compare it to actual art, but like
It's not silly though. This is what I want to come back to, because like one of the things that I know about you that I don't think our audience really knows is how you are incredibly, I hate to use the word, but you're incredibly generative. Like you're not an AI, but you are generative. You're creative, and you're aesthetic, and it's awesome. And so I love hearing you talk about this kind of stuff, and I want to share it with the world.
oh, well, thank you so much. That's very, very kind of you. Yeah, I always got some sort of like arts and crafts going on in the background, which I don't even share with you just because it's too nerdy. But like I do. I enjoy making like kind of elaborate plots and this sort of thing. It's not necessarily for work even. Like I do like sort of like, by the way, if anyone out there is like interested, go to Tidy Tuesday on Twitter, and they have like a whole bunch of these ggplot nerds out there making just absolutely beautiful graphs.
I think that kind of brings up another point of just something I wanted to talk to you about today. I think a lot of times we talk about on this podcast, what are some of the things that, are kind of like frustrating us, or what we think the future should look like, or what don't we like. But I've been thinking a lot about like, what are the things I'm grateful for? What are some of the things that I'm excited about? And I mean, just to keep it kind of on track, I am excited about a lot of the AI stuff that, and
Yeah.
and kind of like if somebody would go out and build those technologies, or even like a fourth of those technologies, doesn't have to be the whole thing. I think it would do some good in the world. But I'm also just personally, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this podcast. I'm grateful to have you as a friend. I'm grateful that my wife and my family let me do all this wild ass shit that we're always doing. And I think it's been so cool how many doors this has opened up to making real connections with real people, and to tie home to like the GG plot thing. I love learning about what makes other people enjoy work,
And
right?
that's the core of IO right there. Just going and talking to people and understand what they get out of it.
And so that's my main hope, is like through this evolution or revolution that we're going through, that we don't lose the humanity of what people are enjoying about work. Like I always tell my teams in the past, like, don't create the future of work you don't want to live in.
Yeah.
Right, so don't go build the Black Mirror shit. Go build stuff that's going to make a future more humane, but it can be more productive and more humane. There is a 2x2 chart to be had there where you can do both.
You're kind of like talking about like the Star Trek universe right there, where like you got a computer controlling everything, but the people are still running around and man the systems and this sort of thing. But
You're treading on thin water, or thin ice, sir. You're losing me by the second.
but I think you're right. It's good to give back gratitude because like we shit on things.
What are some things that you appreciate or you're grateful for that you've enjoyed throughout this podcast?
Oh, like as far as the podcast, well, like I go back to like it started out with just you and me having great conversations, and like we're in the middle of the pandemic, and it's like, well, this is fun. Like I've lost a lot of connections, overall. Like, let's share it with other people. Let's invite other people, interesting people, and just have some great conversations. It's really blossomed into something where, you know, we could share it at PSYOP and like have a whole bunch of people show up and
How wild is that? How crazy it is it like something that you and I were doing
for fun.
for fun, like on Zoom, that you go to a random city like Boston at a random conference like SIB and people actually show up to hear it and listen to us talk to somebody. That's so wild.
I don't know if it's totally random. I mean, it is IO. It's not like we went to like the firefighters convention and we're like, hey, here's some IO topics, everybody.
I mean, maybe the firefighters would like it. I don't know.
We can do some job analysis over there.
We
We
got
can
a good sense of
we
humor.
can automate some job analysis over there. But no, it's been great getting to know you. It's from a macro perspective, like you know, my parents are getting older, and like I think just the value of like personal health that I have right now is exceptionally grateful for. Grateful for my back, my knees.
And I give you a reason to come home and see your parents.
Absolutely. Look at you, you're so generous. Thank you, Cole.
I am generous in some ways. That's not one of them. Well, I think are we gonna do? I don't even know. Are we gonna do a confusion matrix amongst each other? Or are we gonna go straight nerdery?
Let's do a quick one. You want to do pick a number, or you want to do yeah, we'll do a pick a number.
They always go with low numbers, so I'm gonna go with a high number. I'm gonna go 27.
Okay, what is the most junior thing that you were ever made to do on a job?
Junior thing, like a menial task.
Yeah, like I have two examples on quickly off the top of my head. Once I interviewed at a they weren't advertisers, but they're like market research in Half Moon Bay, California. And I've only had two interviews that like went contentiously, like quite literally, like where it was not going to work out. And this lady like was harping on me about like, are you willing to do menial tasks? I was like, okay, like what do you like clean the toilets? Like what are you talking about? She's like, no. Well, are you willing to punch holes in paper and put them into a binder? I was like, yeah. And she didn't believe me. She asked me like 3 different times. I guess like I was like so like kind of
Oh, that's wild. I didn't even think about that as like an option because I used to work in the admissions office for my university. And like that's all we did.
Yeah,
Like
punch
we
holes.
didn't we did mail outs into like manually like literally you're folding pieces of paper, sticking an envelope, licking the envelope, and closing it.
Yeah.
And you do that for like thousands of envelopes. I didn't really see that as meaningful. I just thought it was like or meaning or menial. I just that was like the job.
Part of your job, right?
Yeah. I would say menial in terms of like corporate jobs I've had. I don't know why it came to my mind. It's probably not the most menial thing I did, but the reason why it came up is because I was doing something recently and it came up again. Is I had an executive at a prior company. They gave me a list of like 15 or 20 other companies, and they say, I want you to go I want to actually kind of test you to see if you've ever heard of this term.
Okay.
I want you to go pull their 10Ks and go find these pieces of seven pieces of information in each one, and then give it back to me. Do you know what a 10K is?
Do not.
So, and I didn't at the time either. I do actually know a lot about it now.
You get intimately involved with 10K.
Yeah. Well, if you again, I think this proves to us like we did not go to business school.
Yeah.
Because if we did, we would know. Every publicly traded company once a year has to file an annual report. I thought a 10K was like a, not like a something you run in. Like it's like, oh
Right.
dang, the cancer 10K is going on right now. I got to go run in that. No, but it's like a report that has like anywhere between like 50 and like 250 pages of information about a company, like risks to the company, financials of the company. It's very, very dense. And they wanted me, and this was like way before, certain kind of technology. So I literally had to like read through it and find the pieces of information they were looking for and then like transcribe it. But I learned a lot about actually business acumen through the process. So it's funny enough, it actually helped me a lot in the long run by learning how businesses work, having to go do that weird project at the time. But then the other day, and this just killed me. I was writing an article. It was the one about workforce planning and tech layoffs, and I had to go find some information about like revenue and employee counts and stuff like that. And there's this website now that finds all the information that I had to go look up manually from the 10Ks. It has it for all the companies now. And it like it has it trended over like 30 years. And so you can go ham and do all the research you want to do. And I was like, man, I spent like weeks
Yeah.
reading through 250-page reports that I could have had this website for.
Well, there's always like this lamenting of like the future generation that like doesn't have or that has tools that you don't have. But I think this kind of goes back to our discussion of like the mentoring aspect. So like you were asked to go look up these 10K reports, whatever it is. Now a boss could just do it themselves. But they're not going to give that to a younger employee anymore if they can just like type a few words into some sort of GPT
Yeah,
sort of system.
eventually GPTs are going to scrape that data.
Yeah.
You could ask them to do a whole research project. And again, that's going to come back to the inquisitor. Who's asking the right questions, the right research questions? And then again, once the GPT does all of the analysis for you, presumably correctly, what are you going to do with that information and how are you going to enact change in the world?
Yeah, and like even at that case, the younger employee like loses the insight that they may need. So like now a boss would do this, it spits out all the information. Now there's no like discussion about like, well, how are you going to handle this? Like, what are you thinking here? Like, what would be the best way to position this information that you might get as someone that had to go look at that information and like hand it over,
Yeah.
provide your own thoughts.
Well, that was Alexis's point when we recorded it with her at PsyOp is sometimes doing the menial task actually instills critical thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
And
need
so,
to at least do an ANOVA by hand once to
Mhm.
understand what's going on.
Well, can I make kind of a radical statement just for the sake of discussion?
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
It's not super radical in the terms of like societal issues or something, but what if like no one ever had to do a regression again?
I
Like,
mean,
is society really losing something if no one ever had to do a regret? Like, no human being, a GPT might be doing it or something. But what if no human being ever again had to do a regression? Is that really a loss?
there's got to be there's definitely books on this, etc. But it's like I don't know how to build a car.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if anybody really knows how to build a car. Well, there's definitely people that could do it.
There's people who know
There's
how to
people that
build
do it.
cars.
But like, I know how to fill it up and like gas tank and all this sort of stuff, and
Mhm.
like I can buy a computer and this sort of thing. I couldn't build it from scratch. So like if a disaster hit of some sort and that car broke, I'm not sure that we'd recover anytime soon. Am I making a cogent argument at all?
You are. It's actually an interesting point. You remember back in like, I don't know, it's like maybe like 2014 or something. There was an airliner that was shot down over Ukraine.
The Malaysian airliner?
No, it was around the time of the Malaysian airliner. Yeah, no, I think it might have been a Malaysian airliner actually.
Well, it was never shot down.
Or it was like allegedly shot down.
There was one like over Turkey or
something.
Yeah.
Well, I remember hearing a story that for some reason, like I guess let's just say for the sake of argument, it was going from London to like Australia or something, right?
That'd be
And
a
there
long
was
ass flight. Don't take that flight.
Yeah, that's not the point of the story. There was like some conference, like I think it was like genetics or something that was going on in Australia, wherever the destination was that plane was going.
Okay.
And a disproportionate number of researchers in that field were on the plane and got shot down. And the field itself got set back like 10 or 15 years because so much intellectual capital just randomly happened to be on that plane that was shot down or allegedly shot down.
Well, I mean, this is why like a lot of companies won't let their senior leaders fly in the
Mhm.
name.
There was a whole TV show about it was like when they do the State of the Union address in the United States, there's one person in the line
can't be in attendance.
Yeah, that can't be in attendance. There was a whole TV show that was named after that person. I can't remember what it's called. There's a name for it. Let's call it the glorified holdout.
Sure.
Like the glorified holdout.
The backup QB.
Yeah, the backup QB. You got to keep the backup QB in another plane because God forbid, the plane goes down. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I got on that
I
subject.
don't know how we went that far. I will say the most junior thing that I was ever made to do.
You got it back on track. Yay! Scott did it.
This has nothing to do with the corporate world. Is like summer after I graduated high school, I worked on a construction site building gas stations, and as the most junior of junior, my job was either to like when there was nothing going on and like everyone just sitting around, like either go pick up trash, getting my $5 an hour, whatever minimum wage was at the time, or I was this is the most junior thing, hammer nails straight. So you got all these like bent up nails, or like hammer them straight. Why? I don't know. They're probably just gonna throw them away anyway. But yeah, make them straight again. Just because like either that or
Yeah.
do push-ups, because like I need to be moving. It's that sort of like time is money sort of mentality.
You ever seen that movie Cool Hand Luke? It's a really old movie.
No, I know of it though.
It's an amazing movie. It's very timeless. But in that movie, like one of the things, these about the guys in prison, and they make the guys move a pile of sand from one area to another area, and then they say, "Okay, now you've moved over,
Yeah.
move it back to the original area," and like with just shovels, and like, oh man, this seems like the most demotivating, meaningless work because you have to undo everything that you built.
Well, I mean, this goes back to like your talk about like routinizing menial tasks. It's
Mm-hmm.
like these sort of things will probably go away, or hopefully go away, where it's just like
Take all the things that kill the spirit and remove them, or remove them insofar as you can.
mhm.
Right? Like the example I used from working in the admissions office, there are now technologies that do the mailers, that stuff the things, and so you don't have to lick the envelope anymore. I would have loved that. And maybe I would even be out of a job in some ways had that happened. But God, that was very menial work, or a nail straightener.
I mean,
Imagine that.
when I was at Pro Ed, and here I'll do a little IO comparison here, or like a analogy here. When I was at Pro Ed, we had to do these like mailers, just like you're talking about, and we'd get like a team together. So like one person folds them up, another person
Mhm.
like stuffs it, another person like licks it, another person I don't know puts stamp on it, whatever.
Yeah,
Another person like stuffs it into like a mail bin or whatever.
that's the easy job.
Yeah, that's the golden job right there. That's senior leader right there.
Bet you they like meetings too.
They love meetings. But like when we were going through like teams courses, I would use this as an example of teamwork. And of course, it's like one kind of team. It's a interdependent team, like a linear sort of team, as opposed to like
The assembly line.
assembly line.
assembly.
Yeah, exactly. But like just having sort of things you can draw on, like really colors these sort of conversations better than, oh well, I don't know, on a Boy Scout team or something.
I'm still stuck on the person who puts it in the box. They're like, that person has management material right there, written all over.
He's a
Yeah.
go-getter. Take that. The
I
best
think
is the person that like walks into a meeting and like perhaps they're not even the person that like called the meeting, but like they start assigning work to everybody and like the meeting's over and that person has nothing to do and everyone else has all these tasks.
Oh yeah, that's I mean, we're going full circle to kind of the loud talker. You just go in with confidence and you can get anything in this world.
Confidence goes like such a long way. Just because like people know what you tell them, like you really expect them to be like, oh well, they're going to see my behaviors overall, and like if I have this like pattern of things that I've done, people don't remember
Oh yeah.
it.
Confidence is like a cheat code of human personality. It's like, what do cult leaders have? What do con men have? What do, politicians have? They all have an exuberant amount of confidence and they just pull once overs on people all the time.
Like along the same lines, you want to do a little nerdery? We good for
Yeah.
nerding?
I mean, if this hasn't been the whole time,
Yeah,
now it
I
is.
kind of enjoy it. We're having fun
Yeah.
here, but today's most critical challenges are about systems. So, org issues are caused by systems. Organizations tend to focus on individual levels and individual level assessments. Pardon me, interventions. So, for example, like if you're having mental health, they'll give you mental health apps for well-being, but they don't address the underlying system. So it's like, hey Cole, you have burnout and your manager sucks. So here, have an app that tells you to breathe. Like that's not addressing the fucking root cause here, are we? But they call it a super bias. It's essentially the fundamental attribution error. Assume the actions of others are due to their own behaviors and not to the circumstances that they're in, right? So we tend to overlook the system. And overall, to combat this, they suggest diversifying your collective intelligence. So this kind of goes back to what we talked about last week with having different points of view, different genders, ethnicities, etc. Also like neurodivergent sort of folks. Integrate context thinking, which is great. Think about what position someone is in before understanding, before thinking about, oh, they're just a jerk, that's why they're acting this way. Address stress, secure broad input, which kind of goes back to point one, honestly, and adopt a change champion. But I mean, this kind of goes back to that fundamental attribution error that we have in folks, right?
Yeah, I think fundamental attribution error is one of the most difficult cognitive biases because we all see it in other people, but we very rarely see it in ourselves, right? But you hit on something earlier that reminded me. I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, but it doesn't matter, about my problem with nudging is like a lot of these like nudging softwares, they commit the fundamental attribution error. They're like, oh, we notice from your communications you're not seeming very engaged today. What if you decided to be engaged? And it's like nudging you to be. It's like you're not getting at the root cause of the problem. Kind of like to your point from earlier. Yeah. But the other thing, it makes me think of the famous Charlie Munger quote. I love this quote. I've probably mentioned it before on the podcast too, but he's Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway. And he said, the system of incentives leads to the outcome that you're going to see. And that's why I always harp on, especially because, again, we've both worked in HR and I've beat my head against this wall so many times in my career of reward good behavior and punish bad behavior. When your systems of incentives start rewarding bad behavior, everything gets fucked. It's just like it can take a good culture and turn it into a bad culture almost immediately if you have the wrong set of incentives. And so it's really important to understand, what is your system incentivizing?
I mean, we could take this in just all sorts of directions from like organizations, but will we talk about this as far as like the publishing racket? Like, why do people not pre-register their studies? Like, well, the incentives are not there personally. They're not there from the publishing journals. They're not there from apparently society in general to actually do this.
When my riff on this has always been about the scientist practitioner gap. It's because the incentives aren't for academics to publish with practitioners to do real research. The incentives are to go do the most esoteric research topic in history and then publish on that for 40 years so you can get tenure and make a whole career out of it, not tackling real organizational problems. And I wish that we could bridge that scientist practitioner gap better. And I would actually say it wasn't one of the stated reasons we created this podcast, but it is one of the ancillary benefits of it, is that we want to have both practitioners and academics on so we can model the right behaviors, even if they're not being incentivized.
There's also the element of like an organization by definition is collaborative and a system in place, and systems tend to be like robust against failure because of like they're redundant and they have all these like extra issues that are going on. But that also means that like if you have individual level interventions, then they're not likely to work. And it's going to be hard for one person to mess up a system also.
Yeah. When one person can't change a system, I guess, unless they're like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or something. But so, be an aspirational leader. I don't know.
Be a cold napper.
Well, let's move on to the next topic, which I saw that I was surprised that this has not gotten more play in the people analytics space because it was introduced to the Senate. I just saw from looking at it on February 2nd. And so again, we're in May now. It's called the Stop Spying Bosses Act, was introduced to the US Congress.
Sounds dubious.
And the first line of the bill says, this bill establishes requirements for employers with respect to the collection and disclosure of certain worker data, software that are meant to be used to monitor a worker who is off duty or in a sensitive area. Use an automated decision system, which again is talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and it just all the different kinds of workplace surveillance tech that has come up during the pandemic and is now very pervasive. Again, I don't know why this isn't being talked about more, because this is being adjudicated in the Senate currently.
We're so far behind. Like all this sort of stuff should have been talked about 20 years ago. And now that the technology is in the place that it is, it's obviously forefront, but we're so behind.
I keep coming back to this. Don't create the future that you don't want to live in. Right? Why are we so beholden to wanting, like, all right, you know what we could do? What if we started drawing everybody's blood and putting microchips in them, and chemtrails are real, and like all this stuff, like let's put that in the workplace. It's like, no, let's not do that.
Well, I think that's progress, right? It's like, so we're like an amoeba. Like, if you want to like have us like an analogy, or is that a simile? I don't know. I used like there. We're like an amoeba. Like, we go out little ways, and like maybe we mess up, and therefore we gotta like rein it back in. Like, go out a little further, and like you gotta rein it back in.
Is that what we do though?
I should think so. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they just went whole hog. Let's surveil everything,
Oh, if you're
and then
talking
they're
about
like,
surveillance, well,
yeah.
there are those folks.
Like, I don't think it was just a little bit. Oh, let's do a little bit of mouse clicking tracking. It's like, no, let's surveil everything that they do, and then how do you draw back from there without legislation?
So this isn't necessarily surveillance, but it kind of is. So like when I was fresh out of masters, I worked at a company that instilled, I can't remember what it was called. I have a screenshot of it somewhere, and it survived for years and years and years. But essentially, it blocked internet traffic to any website that was not approved, and like their list of approved websites. So they're trying to stop cyber loafing. Trying to stop this, and you had like 10 free minutes a day to surf whatever you want, like go
Better get the most out of those 10 minutes, baby.
exactly, like so antiquated and this sort of thing. And the IT staff would like make these presentations at the company meetings, like, we increased employee productivity by an hour a day by having these measures in place. It's like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, people probably should be concentrating on work during work hours. But B, just because you can doesn't mean you should, because people still have to work here, and people still have a desire to either work here or not work here. It's not necessarily a good thing just because you can.
Well, and it's like a tragedy of the commons problem, where if one employer is surveilling the crap out of their employees, but another one's like, hey, we're not going to surveil you at all, most employees are probably going to want to move from the one that does super surveillance to another one, unless every company starts surveilling all their employees all the time, and then you have nowhere to go.
We brought this up with Renee Davis a long time ago, as
Yeah.
far as like the
Good callback.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
democratization of data. Like, there is a good way to do this. There is a good way to even like use someone's like cell phone data. Cole's cell phone data. He goes in the office. He moves around.
Let's not use my cell phone data, please.
Yeah, I mean, like anonymize
No, I
it,
get your point.
provide feedback, and like say these are the sort of issues that would increase your productivity by 42% today. These are sort of things that would be automated and no good. You give back some sort of like benefit to the employee, but at the cost of some freedom there. So there is a way to do it. Oh man.
Oh yeah. I can't remember what episode. It wasn't that long ago we talked about this, and I was like, just take the example of these sleep trackers.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, I don't mind if I go on, online and I purchase a sleep tracker that helps me sleep better.
Yeah.
I don't like it if my employer purchases the sleep tracker that's like, hey, did you not get enough sleep last night? Like, I don't want that to happen. And so the same technology can be used in a bad or a good way. It's about the application of it.
I mean, just because you mentioned sleep, we'll bring up the third nerdy talk. I think we're just kind of bouncing around over all sorts of things today. But it's called Having a Creative Day, Understanding the Entire the Entrepreneur's Daily Idea Generation Through Recovery Lens. I can't read my own writing here. So idea generation is important for entrepreneurial success. Solve problems, come up with new ideas, create new products, this sort of thing. And this study explores how recovery influences daily idea generation. So they had people wear these monitors, and they go to sleep, and they figure out all this sort of stuff, do a diary study, etc. And they found that differences in mental recovery help explain age-related changes. Obviously, you slow down in your creativity as age becomes increases. In the multi-level analysis of these diaries from 62 entrepreneurs, they have introduce a new state perspective to understanding creativity, and they essentially found that sleep plus mulling over ideas has a 3x change in idea generation. And another interesting finding was there's more within person variance than between person variance. So like you could have like a really good day or a really bad day, and that's a wider gap than say like your others, everyone else out there.
See, my reaction to this is a paradox.
How so?
You become an entrepreneur, and because things aren't going well, you're having to mull things over. Because you're mulling things over, you can't sleep. Because you can't sleep, your productivity becomes less, and therefore the cycle continues over and over again.
And we also
Because
learned that if you're an entrepreneur, you probably have toxoplasmosis.
yes,
So
another good callback, sir.
so you actually have a parasite in your brain, probably keeping you up and controlling your actions anyway.
And if you don't know what Scott's talking about, go listen to our whole rant on toxoplasmosis. I don't know, when we were at Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite and probably freakiest conversations we've had on the podcast.
It's hard to beat toxoplasmosis in entrepreneurs, but I mean, like, we don't talk enough about, like, we talk about like well-being in the office and like all this sort of stuff, but like I don't think sleep gets enough credit. Like, I've seen like nap pods in offices, and like it depends on the organization's culture and structure, like whether it's permitted to actually use those or not. There's a lot of orgs that's like, yeah, well, we'll have a nap pod, but you're a lazy SOB if you go use it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's a very good indicator of your culture.
Yeah.
It's like what is allowed, what's not allowed. But I also like just to bring it home, and since my last name is Napper, are you a good napper or a bad napper? Like when you wake up from a nap, do you feel refreshed or do you wake up more tired?
Me, I feel awful. Like I don't nap hardly ever. If I nap, it's I need it badly. Like there's probably something wrong. I got like something coming on. I hate these people that just like sit down and just fall right to sleep, and they annoy the shit out of me.
I do enjoy a good nap, but it's like a drug, because if you nap for a little bit, I'm like, I wish I could nap a little bit longer. But if you nap for a long time, then I'm like, I'm so tired now that I woke up. And it's like, so like the ideal nap is like 8 hours. And it's like, wait, that's just sleeping at night.
It just turns out I'm really tired. That's the
Yeah.
whole goal there.
Exactly.
You know, like another thing we don't really talk about is like the drinking culture, and we don't have anything on England to bring it full circle back to England.
The
But
queen,
like,
she was a drinker. You know,
but
he said the queen, she was a drinker.
she do keg stands, from what I understand, which I don't understand much.
That was a good pun.
But like, alcohol will, like, I think the horrible aspect of alcohol, worse than like obviously it impairs your cognitive functioning, this sort of thing, and obviously don't drink and drive, but like it robs you of sleep, and that will impact you for several days. Obviously you're not hungover, but
Well, I think it's REM sleep. You can sleep, but you're just
you
not.
pass out. That's not the
Yeah.
same.
It's not the same. Your eyes are closed, you're immobile, but you are not like getting the generative sleepiness, whatever sleep does for you. All the good juices from sleep are not happening, and I totally feel. I mean, I'm to this point. I'm getting so old, man. Like, if I go past like 2 cocktails or something, like I know it's gonna affect me for like 4 days because of sleep.
Same. Like I can feel it. I feel moody, and I think it's all based on sleep.
Yep.
And like if you throw in, like, I mean, a lot of people are going back to the office now. Return to office culture. Go to happy hour after work.
Yeah.
You know,
or conferences for that
conferences definitely.
matter. Ooh,
Oh boy, I
PSYOP is
felt
tough.
that psyop. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still recovering. Gosh, wow.
Who's like not recovering is the king of England. Bring it all the way back around.
Really good seeing you in person, man. I don't know. Any final words before we end the podcast with no guest?
Oh boy. No, I don't really have any great words of wisdom today.
Where can you find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah,
Scott?
that's my go-to response. Or rate me from 1 to excellent.
Where does excellent come from? I'm curious. I've never heard that expression until you started saying it the other day. I've heard like rate me on like 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, but you said 1 to excellent.
Yeah, just be obtuse.
Okay.
Because like that's not a real scale. It'd be like rate me from like 1 to F.
That would be interesting. How would I answer that?
That's my point. Like Alexis Fink blew right past it. I was like, oh,
Yeah, she steamrolled
she's
right
like,
over
I
it.
would call it great.
Yeah. And I was like, you are lying. All right, dude. Well, this has been fun. You've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott and nobody.
As always, all opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
You've been listening to Directionally Correct, the People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott.